Today we're going to construct a unit circle inside a paper plate. And the process we're going to use is to draw an XY coordinate plane, draw a circle in that plane, and then take two special triangles from geometry and draw them inside the circle. We're going to use the 30-60-90 triangle and the 45-45-90 triangle. So let's get started. This is one of the plates you were issued at school. In this plate, the center of the circle, or the plate rather, is marked with a hole. So everything will align with that hole. First thing we're going to do is draw a line across the plate going through that hole. Now the orientation of the plate when you draw a line doesn't matter. We're going to line everything up to the center. Now this is going to be our horizontal axis, so we're going to call this X. Next I'm going to take my protractor. I need to stay centered here. Line up on the center here, which is where that hole is, and make sure that that x-axis goes through 0 degrees on one side and 180 on the other. Once I line it up that way, I'm going to mark 90 degrees at the top, rotate the plate, realign, and mark 90 degrees at the bottom. Next, I'm going to draw a line through those 2 points going through the center of the plate, and that will form a right angle. If this were my x-axis, this is now my y-axis. Next, I'm going to construct my circle. I'm going to take my protractor and line up on the center and on the x-axis. Now this protractor goes from 0 to 180, so that's half of a circle. Half of a circle we call a hemisphere. So I'm going to draw this top half, rotate it, realign, and draw the bottom half. Now I have a full circle. Now if I start with 0 over here, 0 degrees, and come all the way around the circle, that's 360 degrees. Halfway around the circle is half of 360, so this is 180 degrees. Half of 180 is going to be 90 degrees. And down here at the bottom, I'm halfway between 180 and 360, so this is going to be 270 degrees. And now I'm ready to construct my triangles. First special triangle was a 30-60, so I'm going to draw the central angle at 30 degrees this time. So I'm going to realign, and do it as carefully as you can. If you're off a little bit, it's not the end of the world, but be as accurate as you can. Here's 30 degrees on the inside, so if I go over to the outside, that's going to be the alignment with 150, so I'll put a mark here. On this side I can go to 30 and put one here. Next I'm going to take my straight edge and draw a line from that mark through the center to the other side of the circle. And repeat it with the other point we drew. Again, make sure you go through the center here. And if you look at what we've got here, we have got a 30-degree central angle here, 30 degrees here, here, and here. And all of that is relative to the closest x-axis. I've got the hypotenuse of a triangle, one leg of a triangle in each quadrant. I need to get that third side of the second leg in there. So I'm going to line up on this point where it intersects the circle and draw that on both sides. And that gives me my triangles. Now, the central angle of this one, measuring from the positive x-axis, is going to be 30 degrees. The central angle from here to here is also 30 degrees. Those are reference angles. But this is 30 degrees before I get to 180. So this is going to measure 180 degrees minus 30, which is 150 degrees. This one is also a reference angle of 30 degrees, but it's 30 degrees past 180, so I have to add it to get 210 degrees. And over here, this is 30 degrees below 360, so I subtract to get 330 degrees. Next, I'm going to shade that in. Now notice, these triangles are next to each other, and I want some contrast in my coloring, so I'm going to shade the first quadrant triangle pink, third quadrant pink, and the second and fourth green. There's nothing special about pink and green. Just pick two contrasting colors there. Now this pink doesn't show up very well. Because I'm using a white plate, the contrast between the plate and everything else is pretty stark, so the camera's having some trouble with the exposure here, and that's why I don't have some of the lights on. It's going to be a little dark from time to time, but you can still follow what we're doing here. So these two are pink. And look like this. As I said, the contrast is a little off a little bit. Now I'm going to do the green. Okay, now that's a little difficult to see, but we'll get there. That's our first triangle. Second special triangle is going to be 45 degrees. So we're going to line up again. And again, you may be off a little bit, but for our purposes, it'll be okay. I'm going to mark 45 degrees. Well, here's 40, 50, so here's 45. Now that translates over this way to 135 degrees. 135, by the way, is the supplemental angle. These two angles have to add to 180 degrees. On this side, 45 degrees is going to be here. So once again, line up on your point, go through the center to the opposite side of the circle. Do that in each of the quadrants like this. Again, that center is what keeps everything relative, so make sure you try to go through there as close as you can get. Draw this other leg here. And now my plate looks like this. Now I'm going to color my, well, let's mark the angles first. This is 45 degrees. This is 45 degrees before you get to 180, so 180 minus 45 is going to be 135. So this is 135 degrees. 45 degrees after 180 is going to be 225 degrees. And this will be 315 degrees. Okay. I'm going to shade those all red. So now the plate looks like this. We have one last triangle to draw, and that's going to be the 60 degrees. So go back with your protractor, line up on the center, and find 60 degrees. And 60, just like that. Draw a line from that point through the center to the opposite side of the circle. Now let's do the back side of the triangle. Now all of these lines are going through the x-axis here, so be careful with that. A few people in class accidentally drew across the y-axis. We don't really want that. Okay, so now the plate looks like this. This is 60 degrees. Now this is 60 degrees above 180, so 180 minus 60 is 120. This is 60 degrees past 180, so 60 plus 180 is 240. And this is 60 degrees before 360, so 360 minus 60 is 300 degrees. And we're going to shade this one. And I'm going to shade this one blue. And this is our plate so far. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is convert these degree angles into radians. Well, there are 2 pi radians in a circle, so if I start on the positive x-axis and go all the way around the circle, this is going to be 2 pi radians. Halfway around the circle is half of 2 pi, so this is pi. This point here is just pi divided by 2. And the bottom is 3 pi over 2. So that's 270 degrees, 2 pi over 2. And this is where we are. Okay. Now let's convert these. The simplest way to convert this is take that degree measure and divide by 180. Convert that to a fraction and then write it as pi over that fraction. 30 over 180 converts to 1 over 6. So this is pi over 6. 45 over 180 is 1 over 4, so this is pi over 4. 60 divided by 180 is 1/3, so this is pi over 3. Now let's move to the second quadrant. 120 over 180 reduces to 2/3, so this is 2 pi over 3. 135 over 180 reduces to 3/4, so this is 3 pi over 4. 150 divided by 180 reduces to 5 over 6, so this is 5 pi over 6. We have 180 as pi. 210 divided by 180 reduces to 7 over 6, so this is 7 pi over 6. 225 divided by 180 reduces to 5 over 4, so this is 5 pi over 4. 240 divided by 180 reduces to 4/3, so this is 4 pi over 3. 300 over 180 reduces to 5 over 3, so this is 5 pi over 3. 315 divided by 180 is 7 over 4, so this is 7 pi over 4. 330 divided by 180 reduces to 11 over 6, so this is 11 pi over 6. And we're back to the x-axis, so that's 2 pi. Now we look like this. Now let's mark our quadrants in case we need that later on. This is quadrant 1. Now in quadrant 1, x and y are both positive, so x is positive and y is positive. In quadrant 2, x is now negative because it's on the left side of the origin here, so x is negative. Y is still above the origin, so it's positive. In quadrant 3, x and y are both negative. And in quadrant 4, x is positive and y is negative. X is on this side of the axis, it's positive. Y is below the axis, it's negative. The next thing we have to do is go through and mark these points where it hits the circle here. Now that comes from geometry also. This line here that comes over to this point here is the x value, and from here up to here is going to be the y value. Now if you go back and look at the ratios of those special triangles in geometry, this will give us the square root of 3 over 2 for the x value and 1/2 for the y value. At 45 degrees, the distance from the center to this point is the same as the distance from this point up to the circle. So those values will be the same. Square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. At 60 degrees, the x value is what the y value was from here to here. So we're really just flipping those two. 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. When we get to this point here at 90 degrees or pi over 2, the x value is 0 and the y value is 1. So this is going to be 0 and 1. Now these are all reference angles. Whatever the numbers are for this 30-degree angle, they're going to be the same over here. The only thing that changes is the quadrant. Now when we came to quadrant 2, the x became negative and the y remained positive. So this is just going to be a negative square root of 3 over 2 and a positive 1/2. At 45 degrees over here, those numbers correspond to 135 degrees. The only difference is the x is negative, the y is still positive. And at 60 degrees here corresponds to 120 degrees. But again, x is negative, y is positive. Now when we get to quadrant 3, x is negative and so is y. So we're just going to take those same values and make both negative. So this is negative square root of 3 over 2, negative 1/2, negative square root of 2 over 2, negative square root of 2 over 2.